Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I would. No, I can't do it this end. Oh, that's brilliant. Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
go ahead.
So my first question is, when did you primarily become interested in prioritizing sustainability and conscious fashion? Because I remember that you mentioned that you began customizing your clothes when, I think, when your parents got remarried, right? Was that sort of the first time you started getting into it? Like, was there no other, like, did you just randomly fall into it? Was there like, did you ever do like arts and crafts in your childhood? Anything like, how do you think you got to the beginning?
Yeah, I think it was very much an influence from my grandmother, who was a farmer's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And because she was at home, sometimes I would spend time with her while she was, cooking and baking and sewing and knitting and various other things at the farm. And she would often make clothes for my dolls. Um, and we would reuse whatever materials were not being used in the house. So it might be an old pair of curtains that were looking tired, then they were going to be reused. So then we cut those up to make a little mini dress for me and a one for the dolls or something like that. And we constantly would reuse whatever materials were around. So if a jumper needed to be, if Nan was making a jumper, she and there's perhaps an old jumper that wasn't being worn anymore, she would unpick it and unravel the whole thing and make it a new ball of wool again, and then reknit something else with it. So completely just going back to bases of reusing from the get-go. And I think I just observed it, and it went into me automatically. And so when I discovered, but then I started. My mum had some clothes. My mum and dad had finally got a little bit of money together after having their own very successful business together. But just in the early days, it was hard and it was a struggle. And so everything was just completely, building up and hand to mouth and working as a family. And being the eldest, I think I saw a lot more. And one of the things was that I had uh, I noticed that they mum and dad have got some clothes and they were about to sort of throw them out or discard them. And I guess the habit of passing them to a charity shop was less of, you usually passed it on to somebody else. That was the thing. And mum had a beautiful skirt and that had really nice material. So the material used to get me. It was like, well, that material could be reused in for this or for this or for this. And the same with dad. He had a pajama top. Obviously, I didn't want to keep the pajama bottoms, but I had kept the pajama tops. I thought, well, that looks really good, and and it's in good nick and all the rest of it. And I also liked the way the collar was made because it had a proper Riviera collar and everything. So there was lots of things that could be kept intact and reused. So I kept the front of the thing and part of the sleeves. So I didn't have to do weird cut. And then I cut some of the skirt apart and customized it and made a pussy bow, I believe. Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, there is a photo somewhere of me wearing that, and then also the cuffs. I did the cuffs, so I just doubled the two garments together, and then I made a shorter skirt out of it and a narrower because it was much, it was tiny, really skinny little thing, and I was probably 11 then. And but before that stage, I was remaking, actually, based on what my nana had shown me. When I had a jumper or something like that that I didn't want anymore, but I thought, oh, the material's really nice, then I would cut that up and make some clothes for my dolls. And so it got into that, and then eventually started making lots more than my dolls needed. So I put an advert in our local newspaper and sold those extra dolls clothes as well. So that was about 9 years old. And yeah, then going back at 11, suddenly making a first ever outfit for myself was combined from upcycling mum's skirt and dad's shirt, putting the two together. And it only really dawned on me that possibly I was doing that as an upcycling thing and making something new for myself, but also because my parents it was just being revealed that they were going to separate. And I think the conjoining of the two clothes together actually was me about trying to, I couldn't repair their marriage, but I could put the clothes together to make it whole again, or make them whole.
Wow, that is so insightful. Like I have so many thoughts in my brain right now. So you've really always, so it was just sort of ingrained into you to always focus on, not to always focus, but to sort of to try and upcycle and customize and reuse materials for clothes.
Yeah.
Was the rationale behind that always like, was it for like mainly financial? Was it also was there also at what point did it also come into also the world around you?
I think first of all it was financial habits that my grandmother had and was brought up with from an old farming family that goes back generations. But then it, even though they had a successful farm and they owned their farm outright and it was successful, they had you know, dairy farm and not, you know, good customers, and they very much brought it up to be very organic. It was very natural, and they had a massive you know, they made all their own food, they grew all their own food, so there was a consciousness that was already a habit. And so it was automatic habit, even though they could afford it to buy new materials, it was a habit to reuse if there was something beautiful still that could be reused. So I think it was not to waste. I think the underlying thing is not to waste what we all could be reused if you liked it or perhaps wanted to.
Yeah, so and
then it sorry, then I think it got to me at 11 that I realized, and probably I was unconscious about this, that it was emotional as well. So there was an emotional source to it of my of healing, of trying to make whole again something that was broken.
Okay, so what I'm, just to reiterate to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly, so is that all in all it's a very personal practice, one hand, or like initially, in terms of like the value not to waste, and to just being conscious and doing some and keeping something that doesn't need to be thrown away, and on the other hand, on a very emotional level. But it's like the act of reusing is something personal, like it comes from within.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you haven't got that sort of instinct to reuse from within, which a lot of society doesn't have, I think it's hard to put it there unless there's an emotional cause to reconnect them into that.
Okay, and do you, as someone who works in this industry today, do you see that as the main barrier between, to get people to customize more, or not, sorry, not to customize, to be more, to make more sustainable choices?
I think, yeah, I think it is, because they're not connected. They're not connecting their thought to the impact.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just making sure that I'm getting the most important things down.
Absolutely, take your time. Honestly, it's really, you know, it's a subject I love talking about.
Yeah, this is like, for me, it's like so interesting, because I thought that it, like, before I started speaking to everyone, I was like, oh, it's just because, you know, it's just because of the way you're brought up and you see this happening around you in the media. But like, I think it's so much more about your view of yourself and the reason why you do things, like it, like, as it, you seem to be saying, it's a very personal thing. It's not just about the media told me to do this, or this ad told me to do this brand told me to do this. So it's very like this is very important for me.
Yeah, because we're now sort of told by the media more than we should be. We're being told all the time, which is the worst way to educate somebody. Because if you tell them to do it, they stop thinking for themselves. And the thinking for themselves is the most important part, is actually figuring out and finding, oh, that makes sense for me, or that, that's how could I, rather than being told. And so if we're to be led by the media, it's got to be in a way that helps us think for ourselves.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Another follow-up question I had was that today we use the term upcycling a lot. When did that term, do you think, come into your lexicon of doing this? Because I think that's more of a current, like from the last like couple years or so.
Yeah.
So the use of that vocabulary, do you think, does that carry any weight, different weights to what you were doing when you were 11, if that makes sense?
I think it's just become fashionable now. It's just that we were already doing that and not really acknowledging it, because it was seen as a way of, oh, that's what poor people do. They upcycle because they don't have anything else, so they have to just use secondhand. But now it's like a choice for me. I could buy new, but I choose actually to be more resourceful because I find it more interesting, and I get a deeper connection to something because I can reuse it, and then it's got a beautiful new life brought to it, and I love it even more because of it.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. I think that I totally understand. I think also it's like the use of that term has sort of made it trendy, as I think you touched upon, is that it made it fashionable when, as you said, you've been doing this forever.
Yeah, and I think it's now fashionable so people are doing it for, possibly it's good that people are doing it maybe for fashionable reasons rather than for ethical reasons or personal reasons. But if they started doing it for personal and ethical reasons, they would really feel connected to why that's important in everything they do. And then it's like all of the circles joined up, There's not the left hand doing what the right hand doing. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I still do things that just great at me that I know it could, maybe I can't do as well as I can, and I have to cut corners because we're human and we have limited sometimes time, and that's usually the constraint, or money, which is another constraint. But the more constrained you are, the more creative and resourceful you become. So I've always used the word customize more than upcycle.
Yeah, I've
because I think that. And I don't really know if there is a difference. I think it's just that customized for me is like to make it more custom and unique, and whereas upcycling is just reusing and making that beautiful at the same time, because we need to reuse. So I think it started with customizing because actually it makes it special and unique, and then it adds value and you want to keep it forever because it's got your personal stamp on it. So the more you can personalize, the more sort of connection to it I think you have.
I think that's really beautiful, that your choice to that your lenience, to your tendency to lean toward using customize also goes back to this, to making it personal, because upcycling I think is used a lot like to market, or like in a very like for everyone, like anyone can do it. But when you say customize, it's more I am doing this for myself.
Yeah, that's a good definition, isn't it? That's personalizing it.
Yeah.
And then the upcycling is or more commercializing it.
Yeah, I think that's how, I mean that's what I'm getting from our conversation. I had another question. We also like touched upon like you were talking about, there's like the people doing it for like fashionable reasons, people making more sustainable choices for fashionable reasons and for ethical reasons. Do you think it matters why people do it, or just that they are doing it?
I think if you have a deeper why,
Mm-hmm.
you do it more automatically, and are more rewarded for it personally. So it gives you a greater connection, I think it gives you a greater connection to yourself. And then perhaps your own self, pride of going, I'm really glad I did that. It was a really good thing that I did there. Without being braggy, it's just like you sort of got yourself, and no one told you to do it.
Yeah. No trend influenced you into like
yes,
to satisfy any like social, any like Instagram like social implication or anything, like any standard. You're doing it just for yourself.
yeah. And so then but if you come into it through a trend, that might be a good starting point, because then maybe you'll get the deeper connection next.
Yeah. I never thought of it that way, actually. So a little bit of a detour, but not too much. So I read that your business started with a Pizza East napkin.
Yes. Yes.
I actually I don't know if it's the same Pizza East, but I live very close to Pizza East.
Is that the one in Shoreditch?
Yeah.
Yes, that is the one. Perfect. That was the first.
I very good pizza. I'm sure it's because of the napkins. How did you get to the point where you took this personal practice and made it business, but not in a very like how did you go from this is what I love to do to this is my business now?
So sort of going into design and manufacture, you mean?
Yeah.
Because that had to be sort of manufactured from scratch. We had to weave the fibers, the threads, the colors, the yarns, the material, and then make the napkins. So it's a very simple. It's all squares and lines, so that's good. But it's the process which all clothes have to go through. And I think when you break it down, you realize what goes into the manufacturing process. Of course, if you can do that with consciousness along the way, you are going to have less impact left, right, and center as a result of making that t-shirt, making that clothes, making that dress, wearing that color, because colors are, there's a choice on color, whether it impacts the planet or not, and through the type of dyes you can use and what kind of level of color. But going back to your point, it started with, well, first of all, once I got really into this, I knew perhaps the next stage around 14 was to do a fashion degree. And perhaps my route could be to designing clothes. At that time, the only thing I sort of saw that made unique clothes was costumes. So I was thinking, oh, maybe I'd be a costume designer for the BBC. And I knew that what they required is you needed to have a degree. So that had my sort of trail mapped. And so from that, I did an art, a BTEC National Diploma, which is an art foundation in fashion design. And that got me my place then on my degree, and then did that 3-year degree in fashion and textiles with the chief study being in fashion. And then I could do all the textile, the embroidery, and all of the others were all sort of extra, and knitting and printing and everything. And so once I graduated, I then got my first job here in London, and that was for a company called Eccentrics, who designed beautiful textiles using sort of tropical and very heritage and vintagey sort of style prints, but with modern twist. A lot of great colours. All the colours they made up themselves. They weren't like come from a Pantone book. They were self-developed colours, and also the printing was all done here in the UK. And then, you know, they very much did scarves right through to, eventually my job was to go from helping develop collections and make use of those prints, placement prints into garments, and make those garments up, and get the sample machinists working on those, and then get the technical information prepared so that it become made in duplication. And then that was a very good grounding, really, as a smaller sort of business, and also doing it all in the UK. At that time, we were based in the East End as well, so where there wasn't such a thing as cool Shoreditch, there was 0 people around, and there was just either Bishop's, you know, the banking area. I've forgotten what it's called. Bishopsgate, isn't it?
Bishopsgate.
Yeah. And then bank, and you know, you couldn't be sort of further apart really from what we were doing. And then I got a job in Hong Kong. Well, I got an opportunity to go to Hong Kong first of all, and I thought that bit I'm going to add in bringing my design out, because I was already doing a huge amount of commission work for weddings and private things, projects, and also doing alterations for a lot of the staff that were in Eccentrics. So I was already customizing things, making, you know, tweak things as an extra income anyway, and as a passion that I just love doing it anyway. And I was well set up I'd sort of made my own little mini studio at my home, because I had a really great big flat, lot of space in Camberwell. And so it gave me the opportunity to sort of have that going on. And then eventually Hong Kong, being based in Hong Kong, got me into seeing how factories worked on a different scale, but also then being able to see where a lot of the world's trims and silks and luxury items came from. And so it sort of turned on its head what you thought about China and some of China, because some of China provides the crap and the poor quality, and some of China provides, you know, the highest possible sort of beautiful materials and processes and things. So it was really sort of taking from that what I wanted to learn and also use in my work, and then start consulting back into making collections for British brands, which while I was doing for customers, that led into customers who were making fashion collections that didn't know how to work with a factory and didn't know how to make more than one item repeated very well, and they needed to sort of get more materials and how to join it all together with unique materials, that perhaps one material came from France and one came from Japan, and you know, the silk maybe came from China, and then doing, you know, corsetry or whatever the combination was. I was just thinking of a particular client, La Petite Salop, who really was very successful and needed that support in transitioning her brand to be more a ready-to-wear collection that she could supply, and so that led into hospitality brands as well, because they started, Soho House being one of the first, wanting to have unique made product that actually matched their style and made them stand out from the rest. And that's where the napkins happened.
Okay.
And then that led to the aprons, making them reversible aprons with the green and the grey, or you know, and then the next concept store, the, you know, Kentish Town or Portobello, they were the blue and the grey, and then the bags, you know, so getting a little branded collection, which is very much how fashion works, but moving it into a new niche market.
So how do you so obviously, like, as an entrepreneur and a business owner, like, you obviously want to expand. So how do you find that you balance like this like expanding and the prioritization of like consciousness for sustainability? Like how
Yeah, that is
I'm interested in how you like approach that and how you see it.
Well, I think the only way you can do that, for me, is stay small.
Okay.
But stay flexible when there is a project outside of your expertise or outside of the manufacturing things that you do. You sort of have to think out of the box, and who can you partner with who has as stronger ethics as you do, but perhaps can do that job, like in supplying a uniform that from a different source that they have you know, verified and you know, really as strongly and as ethically done, but perhaps then serves the customer's demand. So that's on, for example, with a uniform. And so it then means partnering, and maybe there's some compromise, but generally I try to make sure that there's as much alignment as possible, so that we have a good marriage of my values, the ethics, and the client's needs all combined together, and then teaching the client, look, we need to make sure we try to reuse these as strongly as possible. So for example, in one of my clients where I do make their bespoke uniforms, and that's all made with my factories, and there are small orders, so they're under 100 pieces every time they order every year. So, you know, that is a smallish number to produce a very bespoke uniform that has various different sizes, different back lengths, so it needs to fit the people well. That how I deal with that is I go every year. We also review what has been the wear and tear on the previous supply from the previous year, and if there's anything that can be repaired and replaced to make that completely whole again and back into circulation, looking perfect and great. Because when they've gone to the lengths of having all their beautiful embroidered branded logo on there, and there's a really good fabric and it's strong, but perhaps the edging trim has started coming off a bit, or it's got caught and it's got damage, or the hems come down, or there's been a slight rip, those things can be repaired. And most of the time they haven't, you know, or there's a hook and eye come off. Simple things. But most of the time people don't bother to go back to the manufacturer and say, I want these repaired. And I think that's essential.
Yeah, like I think it's very easy to say, okay, something is like minorly wrong with this, I'm gonna get a new one.
Yeah.
Instead of going back and saying, wait, this is very simple actually. And going back to you said when you traveled to Hong Kong, so it made me think, so exposure, you think, like you said, like when you went to Hong Kong and you saw like this different perception of China that you different to what you had maybe had originally held.
Mm.
You think so? You think like a key, that exposure to more is a key, to more information is a key tool as a sorry, I'm trying to phrase this correctly. That exposure is a key tool to get people to maybe question their behavior and maybe change it.
Yeah, definitely. That exposure really sort of helped me, sort of embrace, okay, where can I still follow my values and be in this bigger game or bigger sort of place, which in some ways around me was not very aligned. But then there's other parts, it's like finding the roots that do connect to your alignment and using and sort of joining up with those. So, and actually as a result, some of my manufacturers I've been working with for 22 years out there but they're through Hong Kong. So they're not directly just in China alone. They've started and they built their companies through being based in Hong Kong first. And then they've expanded perhaps to have a little factory in China as well. And so they work really from an ethical place as well. And, even, two factories I've got this happening right at this moment. Two factories are communicating with each other because they're both doing manufacturing from Hong Kong at the same time for me. And in order to save the cost, they're joining up the delivery together and they're communicating together because I put them in touch, because I just think the more people are connected and in touch and in transparent, because one does a different product to the other. So they can then combine that and save me money, save the customer money, and we just save resources all over. We're not sending it twice. So that kind of joined up thinking is what helps people. And I've actually just forgotten your question now. I'm not sure.
No, it was about exposure, but
oh yeah,
what you said was connected to what I was going to ask next as well. So you've mentioned, like, I'm just like reiterating what you're saying to make sure that I'm understanding as well. So we've mentioned exposure and you've just mentioned this joined up thinking. When you also mentioned earlier that you sometimes have to sort of teach your clients about the way that you do things. Do you employ this, like, so how do you teach them? Do you use so you try to expose them to more information? Do you try to show them practically for your business, if you communicate with these people, now the costs are lower and it's better and it's more ethical? Like, how does this sort of teaching moment come for you?
Yeah, I usually have to, I educate them in what is practical and is going to get a better long-term product in the end, and also be more durable so it lasts longer. I think that's all the same thing really, but it actually then that process, I help empower them to make the better decisions. So we can both save money and save waste.
Yeah.
I think that's what it always comes down to. And it's probably my upbringing of saving money and saving waste. Yeah. And then driving that through into the key decisions along the way. Yeah.
And how is that taken with your clients? Like, is it sometimes like a bit, like, is it easier with some people? Is it a bit more difficult to come around to other people, to others? Like, how is that really taken when you go about it?
For those that are receptive, which I've usually built up a relationship with them by that point anyway. So therefore I'm co-creating the supply chain with them and the end result with them to the optimum outcome. And it usually leads them to knowing that they need to spend more in order to save money later. And I think that's where we have to look at where things are going wrong in the fashion industry.
Because people, especially with fast fashion, at least as a consumer, you're like, oh, I'm going to spend less now for this small top, but I'm actually going to need to buy another small top in like next week because this one is going to be tarnished. Like that sort of that's a sort of like paradox of like low spending you're trying to avoid.
And I feel for people when they can't, you know, obviously, like, you know, like simple thing, we've got to get a doorbell fixed. And it's been going on for years that we keep getting a doorbell that we think is a better make than the one before, and then it breaks again and we've got to replace it. And now we're like going, let's properly wire in something so it's permanent forever. And even when we've gone from this place of this home, it will be left as a legacy for the next people. And that's what we've got to sort of think about. And but obviously not everybody has the luxury of spending a bit more on their doorbell. But we're so fed up that we've had it broken and we must have spent a huge amount over the years because it's, you know, having to keep replacing with inferior. And it's like, in the end, you pay for it. But it's people can't always find that money immediately in that first incident. So they go, I'll just go for the cheap solution right now because that's all I can afford. You know, I've only got £2 or I've got whatever it is. But it's and I do that, but it always sort of bites you in the bum. And so it's better to save for longer or buy secondhand of anything that you can possibly buy. It doesn't have to be clothing. It could be a doorbell. It could be, you know, a pair of shoes, or it could be a hammer, you know. As if you buy it secondhand, then you know, you're just going to have it just being slightly used, but therefore you're buying quality and reusing what somebody else is now no longer using. And sometimes things just get sold because that person has left this world, they've died, you know, and it's often there's a whole load of belongings that you can't take with you to death. So they, you know, there's always stuff that can be reused again and again, because we have people coming into this world and leaving this world at the same time, which is a bit of a spiritual sort of loop. But it's that whole thing of circular, isn't it? That we are constantly reusing, and we don't need to always just create more and more and more and more and have more and more that gets wasted.
Yeah, I think what you said just then about the circular, but on a personal, like the circular economy, but on a personal level.
Yeah.
Sort of as a requirement to achieve the circular economy as a whole, like.
Yeah.
That. Yeah, that's very interesting. So do you you find that you're reusing and like trying to find secondhand alternatives or like customizable alternatives in places outside of fashion as well?
Yes.
And that
wherever possible. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to also have something brand new when you know it's going to be something that's an investment for a long time. Or consumable goods, of course, you know. But even joining up with other people or other organizations, say in the food world, like this new concept called Too Good to Waste, which is an app-based food purchasing thing. I haven't actually managed to use it yet, but I'm dying to, because I just think the concept's brilliant. You know, we've got all this stuff that's it's just been heated up and put out, but now it's time to get it off the shelves because that's the regulations, but it's still too good to waste and somebody needs to buy it. Otherwise it's going to be binned, or, you know, maybe they can't get it to a homeless person or a charity. And you just think this is an abundance source, and so why not make that opportunity be reused to give somebody else something.
No, I mean, it's really, I haven't managed to use that app either, but that's because I mean, I don't have access to it with my app store, but I mean, it's really crazy. Like I was in Tesco the other day at like right before they were closing, and they're just like off the shelves, like into a big bin, like all the like the baked goods into like a bin bag. Like, and like I was like, so, I mean, obviously it's like not the workers' fault, like they're just doing what they're told, but like it's insane, like the sheer amount of food that's just going to the bin, you know. I think it's so crazy.
And there's so many people starving that don't have
Yeah.
enough money or don't have enough decent food. You know, there should be sort of some kind of that's the time when it's like, okay, anything at the, you know, even if it goes out the back door rather than the front door, it's at the back of the depot rather than the front of the store. That's still ethical, because it's then going, okay, well, these goods we don't want to sort of, you know, just, but actually it needs to be reused, because that's you know, it's just, yeah. And of course, how you can't, if it's not got a personal connection, and that, like you're saying with the employee, of course they're just following corporate orders, which is mass waste at the end of the day, because it costs us money to have it, you know, recirculated to a charity or whatever it is. I don't know what must be going on there, but it's fascinating, isn't it? And that, and to think that also, you know, this thing, and I've never witnessed it myself, but I've heard of it a lot, and people have told me it from big brands directly, that, you know, that part of their job has been had to allocate sending their rabbit fur boots to landfill, and not to landfill, to the incinerators, because there was an overproduction. And you just go, on what level? That's insane. Just get it somehow passed to some dead stock distributor, have it all relabeled and recreated and resold, and then that solves the problem and keeps that thing in circulation. But to incinerate is just the biggest sort of, like, you're consciously destructing something because you've been wasteful. I think we can no longer excuse that, and I think that's where the fines need to come in charging when you choose to waste, because you've been corporately and consciously destroying.
Yeah, so it's this sort of like conscious destruction versus reproduction, or
recirculation, conscious
circulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I have one more question that I raised a long time ago, and we sort of drifted, but you mentioned when you were talking about the doorbell, you were talking about like a legacy, like even if you buy like that, you're gonna get a really good, like, well-made one, and even when you leave the house, the doorbell is gonna like stay behind as a legacy. Can you tell me more about that? How does that go into like this tendency to leave a legacy or create a legacy? How does that play into your day-to-day life or into your choices? Or did you just say that? Well,
no, I think I think for me, with on a clothing level, I guess, it's making, I know if I design something, I want to be proud of what I've designed, not ashamed. I don't want to go, oh, that uniform is disgusting, I hate it, but it's what the client wanted. No, I don't do that. I think we've done a disservice if that's the case. but or how can it be better, to better serve its longevity, and if it's a legacy piece. I think it's coming back to always being proud of what you do. You need to be proud of what you create. And I think with my clothes, I'm always looking to sort of improve them, so that I think I want to keep them, so then I keep them longer. But hopefully my daughters will want to inherit my clothes, or whoever does inherit my clothes, if it's not them, whoever really thinks they're amazing and special, and that you can see the love put into them. And I think that's the thing, is if you put love into something, then you sort of want to keep it longer, because it's
because it's sentimental.
Yeah, but not even sentimental, going back to the workshops I was talking about in the beginning, or the retreat of reconnection. Reconnecting people to their clothes, and reconnecting people to each other and to themselves, ultimately means that they're pouring more love back in, and that is going to have a greater outcome in what they produce that's beautiful, that they love more, and then they keep it. So I think that's the legacy piece, is like leaving things in a better place than what they were before you were given them. So the same with our planet.
Yeah, I think that might be, if I remember correctly, I think there's a definition for sustainability that sounds very similar to that, actually. And how did you get to this point where, like, your prioritization of having like a personal pride in what you're doing, like to love what you're doing, did you find that you gained that as you got older because someone said something to you, or is it your mom or your grandma who has said something to you? Like, how do you think that became a value to you, or a priority for you to have personal pride in whatever you were doing?
Many decades ago, I started doing a lot of personal development and inner work. And I did volunteer coaching, volunteer leadership courses, and helping people reconnect with themselves, really, and put right what they perhaps had done wrong in their life that was causing them enormous pain. And the mistakes were repeating, and all of this kind of thing. And I think that leadership work and work on, you're constantly helping, you might be helping others. In order to help others, you have to go deeper in helping yourself, where those things aren't whole or healing yourself. And that I remember being told by one of my coaches, when I was close to even when we needed to move on from that role and go out into the world and do other stuff on top. And I remember having to leave the volunteer work. It was just leaving it with integrity, so that you knew you could be proud of what you'd done, that you hadn't left a trail of unclosed doors or litter behind you. And that sort of sense of, even though, I can't continue any longer in this role, and perhaps making a difference and forever in this area would be valuable, of course, but it's still leaving with pride, because yeah.
And sorry?
No, okay. No, I think I'm repeating myself, but
no. I think the image that I get in my mind when you're talking about like making sure you're not leaving with any unclosed doors also sort of replicates this image of like a circle, like like the circular spiritual like economy or approach that we were talking about before. If you don't mind me asking, And like, of course, if you don't want to answer, you by no means have to. You said that you got to this point where you had to do a lot of inner work. Do you feel comfortable elaborating on how you got to that point, or not so much?
Oh, completely. I just think you always get to a point in your life where you're at a crossroads,
Okay.
and starting certain things aren't working, like your relationship suddenly is not working, and or it's ending, and you've got a massive life decisions to make, and or you're in pain. And for me, that was still I think holding trauma from my parents' divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that going through my own personal relationships as an adult, and some of those things then falling apart, and my personal circumstances and getting ill health, which was another key factor. Suddenly having ill health, when you have ill health in the body, dis-ease, disease is dis-ease, so you're not at ease with yourself in something, and you need to get under the bonnet and have a look at what that dis-ease is really about. And it's usually something in your past that you haven't healed. And for my part of that stuff that I needed to re-heal or to heal and have a look at and forgive and complete, was around my parents' separation pain. And but also perhaps the anger that was there, and then choosing to mirror in some way in my own personal relationships some of that frustration. And that I think that inner work is, I mean, that's just one of the areas. And then you can see that sort of ripples out into many other situations. And also then and also things like not being good enough, all of those, or not reaching where you expected to go and feeling frustrated. Then you've got to get to, well, hang on a minute, I've chosen this. So if everything's a choice, why am I so upset, with this choice? So then going, well, maybe I'm not really choosing that, I'm just being a victim of it. And so what if I could change, and choose something else? And so we're constantly having to sort of self-check, or self-regulate, or check in where things are going in alignment, or where things are taking you away from what you're perhaps here to do, and what brings you joy and lights up others and leads the way for others, as well as for your own personal good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was very, I really like what you said about the disease is dis-ease.
Dis-ease, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very smart.
Do you know where I learned that from? I learned that through Bob Proctor. He is an amazing sort of leadership coach and spiritual guru, and he's got a lot around wealth, and he's creating abundant, he creates abundant wealth through actually really, really beautiful, pure, heart-centered sort of choices. It's really, really interesting how the wealth and the alignment can come together. And he was interviewed on The Secret. So if you've never ever seen that, it's something I love to rewatch every now and again.
Yeah.
So he's on The Secret as one of those amazing gurus.
Okay, I definitely noted that down. I think this may be my last question.
Okay.
So you spoke about reaching the sort of crossroads and how that led you towards making sure that you leave everything with pride and with integrity. But you had mentioned that there's the crossroads that you mentioned. I feel like it's not. It's something that I think it's. You can say that everyone reaches a crossroads at least once in their life.
Absolutely.
How, like, what do you, in your opinion, people who end up in a different place than you, so like someone who ends up being like the owner of ASOS or the like whoever is in charge of making those decisions, what in your opinion do you think led them to in that direction and you in a different direction? Like what is responsible for that?
I think some people are good at big business, and some people are better at a more personal business. And I think I've chosen or have been best suited to a more personal business. But then that's maybe where the opportunities have led me to one place or another. Not to say I wouldn't have liked to have tried that route and perhaps put my magic through that, you know, through that channel, but it just, it did, that path didn't sort of present itself to me really. And I have tried working in bigger corporations, and sometimes there's a lot of compromise, I think, that can sometimes mean your personal integrity has to be compromised. But yeah, I'm not to say that isn't they're not doing stuff with the best choices, in the best awareness, with the best resources that they can possibly do. There's also, with big business, remember, there is also behind all of that a board of people that are possibly got money involved. And if it's about their money, they're not connected to personal decisions. So ultimately, they're just connected to their money. And I think that's where the divide happens.
Yeah.
In not always having it at the core of their purpose, because but then profit and people and purpose still have to come together, and it has to always be profitable. But I've had to sacrifice some of that along the way. I'm not saying that should be the case, or maybe I haven't made the right business decisions sometimes, but yeah, you know, it's a hard one to answer, I think, ultimately, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. I mean, what you said definitely resonated with me. But I meant no, I didn't mean to be like, oh, why aren't you like a big?
Oh yeah.
Oh no, I'm like what I think what I was getting at was that, if you look at someone who is making less conscious decisions, in your opinion, what do you at that crossroad in their life, why do you think that they ended up in a place where they weren't like at this crossroads, they didn't get to the conclusion of being prideful, having integrity, and being conscious and being spiritual? Like, do you think it's because of money, how you touched upon in the end? Like, so when you're at a crossroad, they were able to rely on their money, whereas, or what in
I
your
think if you have, I know this sounds funny, but I think if you have something with your health, I think it wakes you up.
Yeah.
Or it won't, and you allow yourself to be a victim of your health. But I think in some kind of ways it gives you a chance to go, oh my gosh, if I don't take control of why this has happened, or what's happening, as if like you have a choice in this happening again, you're not learning from the dis-ease, you know. And I think sometimes that can bring enormous gratitude that things have happened. But it's, I think it's an awakening. People need to be prompted into an awakening. And whatever that prompt is going to be, and how that prompt is going to come, and at what time in their lives it's going to come, is whether they read the signs or how connected they are to it at the end of the day. Yeah, it's It's a big question. That's a big topic, I think. Be a very curious discussion, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just go over my like initial list of prompting questions to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Sure. Let's grab some water.
Okay, so this is hopefully my final question. To say something insanely interesting again. So, if you could draw a timeline of how you became the person that you are now in terms of like sustainability, like value-wise, what do you think would be the key moments in that timeline?
Definitely when I was with my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
7, 8, 9, maybe younger, maybe 5. Definitely my parents split.
Mm-hmm.
That was a profound moment. Definitely their marriage, which, you know, just compelled me to try to look for clothes that I could wear to their weddings, and it'd be so enormously disappointing of what was available out there. It was so shockingly poorly made, or so shockingly sort of temporary. And, you know, you don't wear a sort of temporary here 1 minute, gone the next kind of garment necessarily, although I can completely picture the fabric and everything of the thing I did wear in the end. It was pink pedal pastures I ended up wearing to my dad's wedding. I'm not sure if I wore it to my mum's as well. And a pink fluffy jumper, and they were really actually cool. I loved wearing them, actually. I did wear it a lot. But yeah, the stuff that I found in the charity shops that were vintage pieces that had been in somebody's wardrobe for life, and then they died, and then it had been donated to the shops, I found profoundly richer. And that's what got me on my journey of, you know, seeking the gold.
Yeah.
And the special and the unique, and then you can do more with that, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I really like
that was it. That's quite the childhood, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's so. This is very, very interesting for me. I think it's really interesting the way you said that, like you were talking about what you wore to your dad's wedding, and how you loved what you still love what you were wearing, because I think that when I think that, at least I have this a lot with my friends or with other people, like you look at old pictures of yourself and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I wore this, or I can't believe I did that. And that's because and it's often with clothes that are like whatever is trendy, or whatever is just happening at that moment, whereas and you end up hating it after. But maybe because what you wore was more curated to yourself, that love for it maintained over time.
Oh, I like that. I like the curated to yourself.
It was customized.
Yeah, customized to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't know about color at that point. And maybe it wasn't the best color for me to be wearing, candy pink. But it matched. The top matched the bottom, you know, that was a conscious decision. Yeah, I think it was more of a personal choice. It wasn't just, oh, put on anything and it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I think when you go to weddings as well, I think that's when you want to wear your most special pieces. And so they do matter what you wear more than any other day. But I've tried to make every other day, any other day, matter what I wear, even if it's going to yoga, or it's going to shopping. I generally will always still think I still need to look okay. And it was hilarious because I feel better then in myself. And it was hilarious. I took my daughter rowing, of all things to do, you know, on Sunday, and she's really into rowing, and it's just totally outside of my area of knowledge, and like, you know, But even so, I was wearing my gorgeous vintage Christian Lacroix jacket with these gorgeous gold buttons and underneath, because it's really snug jacket. It's beautifully coutured. And it was just such a clever find. Underneath that was a burgundy jumper. I then had my burgundy, like really nice tracky bottoms. So they were semi-casual, but really also coordinated. Then I had burgundy trainers. Oh my God. That I got in lockdown and I love them and I've worn them to death. And I'd had a burgundy hat that I'd found. I mean, I went a bit mad in the burgundy, and this man actually commented it when it was, we got chatting, and he said, oh, what do you do? And I said, fashion. He said, oh my God, that explains why you're head to toe in burgundy and coordinated when most people haven't even thought about what they're wearing when they get out of bed. And it's so like, it's all part of the plan, but it also comes unconsciously now. So I don't, I can tell, I can picture a color in my head and go, even though I'm in a charity shop, I know that matches with the color I've got, that thing I've got at home, and it's going to look really lovely together. And also there's an ethos in Buddhism that you wear burgundy on a Sunday. So there's that connection to the sort of energy of apparently the vibration of a color causes a deeper connection to a certain day of the week, which I'm open because I'm quite open. I'm open to believing that and just trying it on for size. And I always, somehow the magic seems to happen around me. So I go, well, that must mean that it's true. Or is it just
because you have mentioned color like quite a bit, like very like briefly, but like even like when you went to put on your lipstick, you're like, I need some color. Like that, does that add a lot to your experience?
Definitely. I notice when there's a color missing and I know where to add it in, or I notice when a color goes, wow, that's like a mega powerful, I can feel it. I can feel what the color's doing. And so I got this purple coat, which I'll send you a picture of if you like. And it's absolutely stunning. If you actually, it's all, probably you'll find it all over my Instagram actually. And I started wearing it this season because I got it last winter in lockdown, and people said to me, where are you going to wear that? No, one person in particular, actually, I won't mention their name, but I knew I'd get wear for it for the rest of my life. And it might only be seasonal, it might only be once or twice, it might be at winter time only, and it wouldn't be when I'm walking the dog, and it would only be moments of glamour. And then of course last Christmas there was no lockdown, there was no shops open, there was no restaurants open, there was no nothing, and you couldn't imagine wearing anything, who are you going to show it to? The person on the street that accidentally passed you, and that was about it. Or a walk in the park with someone, but you would then feel a bit overdressed. But I just this purple coat, oh my God, it's like a magnet, it magnetizes people to you, but you also magnetize yourself. So it's like, ooh, you've sort of got this extra boost of superpowers.
Yeah. And like even if it's seasonal, like you said, it's seasonal for your lifetime. Like it's gonna give you, like it's gonna keep giving you, like you're speaking about it and you're like so excited and in love with it, and that's going to hopefully, I guess, continue until like forever.
Yeah, because I'd even fussed if I'd gone up a size or I go down a size, it's still going to look great. So I sort of know I'm going to possibly change a bit. But there's going to be enough flexibility in this coat to sort of, wrap it around a bit more, or tighten the belt, or loosen it. I think clothes that are clever last the lifetime, don't they?
Yeah. Okay.
I like that. What was the phrase you used there? Seasonal,
but for your lifetime, I think, something like that. But every season. Or not every season.
There was
seasonal.
season for forever.
Yeah, I guess seasonal forever.
I don't know. It wasn't what you said, but it was something.
No, it's not. Oh, I have the recording. I'll listen to it back to it when we're done.
That's great.
Okay, so I think, I mean, on my end, I think I have ran out of questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. It was really, really insightful, really great speaking with you. Is there anything you want to ask, say, anything on your end?
No, I've really enjoyed it. And I think what's great when you have a dialogue about these kind of topics, they actually expand.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think even for myself, I've said things I'm surprised but delighted that have popped out that I wouldn't have expected to have said. So you caused that. So it was wonderful to have that experience, you know, and it's another layer, isn't it, of development. A development or grounding into the subject.
Yeah, I mean, every time I have one of these interviews, I always get really nervous before, and I'm like, I really hope that it goes well. And then by the end, I'm like, this was like every time I feel like my brain is like getting bigger every time. Like it's really, really insightful. It's really nice to speak to it like that. I mean, as you said, like having that dialogue is expansive. So
yeah, and I think you're right. You mentioned that somewhere, and I think I wrote that down. Oh yeah, so it gives, you know, having more exposure just it helps the whole expansion, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing.
Thank you. Oh, I had one small question, not interview question. Is there anyone that you think you can point me in the direction of who you think might also be helpful? Or, I mean, if not, it's totally fine. But
absolutely. Yeah. Now, she has developed a knicker brand, and so she's working and developing an area in restorative textiles as well, and natural dye. Okay. And if that's of interest to you, she joins all that up into the picture of fashion.
Yeah, definitely. What's her name?
Her name's Vanessa Barker. She's a good friend of mine, and also we've sort of gone alongside our careers together in the last 10 years at least, I think. And we cross-fertilize and share connection if we need help. But we've come from a different approach, whereas I'm all about reusing secondhand. She's all about restorative textiles and putting nothing but natural stuff on your skin. And I believe that on a, you know, washing and body and everything. But I love my vintage too much, which is often made of really unusual, weird and wonderful fabrics, which I just think are so precious, because eventually they'll be illegal to make, you know, synthetic fabrics. So we may as well treasure them and enjoy wearing them, like Lurex and weird and wonderful things like that. Anything with a bit of gold in, I love. So even more reason, you know, a bit of gold. Here, it's like my secondhand glasses case. But even more reason to reuse it, because you know, it's just like fur coats. Once a fur coat has been made and passed down generations, I think, you know, it needs honoring and reusing, because, you know.
Yeah, and that's exactly the joint communication that you were talking about before. I mean, how you said cross-fertilize
yes,
as well. Do you think you can put me in contact with her?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I shall email her, and if she says yes, I will connect you.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Yeah. Okay.
It would be really nice. It would be nice to see the recording at some point when I want. when I want to, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah,
But you tell me what I'm ever allowed to, use, if ever at all, or not, if it's allowed, permissible. But I know it's after you want to
yeah
get this work together. So
yeah, and I'm gonna I'll speak to my supervisor as soon as possible, probably around next week,
sure.
and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, sure. And I'll get that thing signed for you and sent back to you as well.
Perfect.
All right, well, have a super day. It'd be great to put us on a podcast, wouldn't it? That's what I'll be in the back of my mind.
Very smart, yes. I didn't think about that. Yeah,
I would love that. In fact, it's something I would love to eventually be able to do.
Yeah.
And just create dialogues with incredible people that I think we all have alignment with, that we can learn from, for the circular clothing movement, and be just part of a movement. So yeah, if you have any ideas about whether we can do that, would be
making wonderful. A podcast. Sure. No, but that's really big thoughts. I like it.
It would be great to be a co-creator, and we can.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Shir. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And you. Bye.